good. That's really good. What were the years you worked there at the freezing works? Can you remember?
I worked there for 3 years before it closed. So I worked, I started there 3 years before it closed and was there, right up until the last day. Yeah.
Right. What was the job?
I worked in the laboratory as just a lab technician, and on the bacterial side of things. There was a chemistry side and a bacteria side, and I worked on that side. So it was basically testing the meat for different bacteria, and also the water and whatever. Yeah.
Did they do that very often?
Every day. Yeah.
So that's quite precise.
Yeah, it was very precise, because you were looking for certain bacteria that grew in meat, or in water and whatever. So yeah, I mean, if there was bacteria and it didn't get sold. Yeah.
That's interesting. I was just talking to James when he worked there back as a boy in the 60s. He was saying then they didn't have all that.
No.
Like the whites and
Yeah.
all that. They were smoking and quite
Yeah, I've seen photos of it, and it's like, they used to do that, and now they're sort of pretty, focused on hygiene and everything, and I often wonder just what difference it all makes, wonder what the hygiene, you presume the hygiene back then would have been horrible, but I don't know if there was any proof of it, so it's interesting.
What do you remember of the buildings? Because they would have all been there, wouldn't they?
When I started, I worked there in the Christmas holidays. One particular year, I must have been probably just turning 16 then, and my dad got me a job in the holidays, and I worked in the lab at that stage. Was like 2 dingy little rooms. It was horrible. They were tiny, really, really tiny. And they were waiting then to have a new building brought into the freezing works. It was a brand new lab, and that's how I got the job. It was I was basically told that once a new lab arrived, they would be employing more people. And when I went for my job interview, this new lab was huge. It was a huge laboratory, but it was built in 2, so it was made to be able to be transferred away, which, when I think back, probably was a telltale sign, but at 16 I just thought, oh, that's amazing that they could make 2 buildings, put them together, and without even realising that maybe that might have been a little bit of writing on the wall about what was going to happen in the future. But all the other buildings were there, they were... some of them were so old, and yet there was a new amenities block. The huts that some of the men used to live in, they looked horrible, but they were always occupied. So it was new. There was new buildings there, and then very old buildings. A bit of both, really.
Are they? When you look back at your memories there, are they fond memories there?
Oh, I loved it. It was the best time. It was a lovely time to be, I suppose, living in Patia. And I've always had a job all my life, from 16 to now. And I've always enjoyed all my jobs, but oh God, that was the best place to work. And I think there was a very if you had to sum it up, it would be quite simply, if you didn't work there, you just wouldn't understand. If you didn't work there, you won't know. You wouldn't even be able to imagine how nice it was. Going to work was just an absolute pleasure, and it didn't matter what you were doing. And in the lab, I had some horrible things that I had to do, and you just loved it. I loved it. It was heartbreaking for me when they announced the closure. And it was heartbreaking because not just was I losing my job and my income, but our whole town was losing, something very important, probably far more important than what we ever realised, which was quite sad. But I loved it. There wasn't anything I didn't enjoy about it. It was, it was just a nice place to be, and as a 16-year-old girl, because there were very few women other than, in the office, there was only probably 3 or 4 others in walking around the freezing works, and it was all men, and a lot of them, it was one of those things. There was a lot of respect, and it was, you got teased and whatever that goes with it all, but at the end of the day, I felt very safe, which is quite nice, But it's a neat place to work, lovely place.
Looking back now, now that it's closed, that's one thing. I think it closed in '85, didn't it? But since then, they've demolished all the buildings. Just what's your memories now, looking back at that lot? The buildings aren't there anymore. There's maybe a couple of buildings.
Yeah, funny you should say that, because it was only over Easter, my husband and I drove down there and took our grandson, and because my husband worked down there too, and we said to my grandson, this is where the freezing works was, and he said, well, where? And it's like, I suppose Barry and I could look out and just see it, and it's like, well, how do you describe that to a little child that has no idea what a freezing works looks like or anything like that? But when it became quite derelict after it closed, a lot of people wanted it gone and whatever. I've probably always been a little bit sentimental about things. I actually wanted it to always just be there. I could see the dangerous side of it. I could see what it was an eyesore, and when the fire happened down there, I can remember. I was probably one of the first people to know, because my husband's in the fire brigade as well, and so his pager went off. I read it. And then from our place, which is on this main street down the other end of town, I could actually see the flames and hear the noise from there. And I remember feeling really quite emotional about it, and sort of thinking it's an old derelict building, but I don't know, it was more than that for me. It was very important. Maybe it was because it was my first job, I don't know, but my dad worked there too, so there was lots of little connections. And then when it came to getting rid of it, I found that really hard, because I guess for me it's like I work at a school now, and some of these kids are never going to even know what it looked like. Before it was quite a rugged old building, but now there's nothing there, and I even really wanted the chimney to be saved, but that wasn't going to happen. But I don't know. I think I always wanted to be able to pinpoint where it was for future generations, I can remember one day at school we were having a sports event, and we looked down on the old freezing works, and I remember one of the boys saying to another boy, oh my gosh, look at the freezing works, imagine being, that old, that you worked there. And it's like, oh my gosh, I did. And it to them it was hundreds of years ago, but it really wasn't. It was, only a matter of years, really. So I found that very hard, more so than a lot of other people. But I found that really hard. I found it was like, oh, it's all gone now. It's over, really. It's over. Sad.
That's great. That was a perfect finish there. It's over. It's over. That sums it up. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's great. That's great.